Yep, I believe so too. And I really think China had lost a lot. You know, there's a lot of reports that came out in the media saying that Chinese government is the most, they benefit the most from the outbreak, and, you know, based on the numbers and this and that. And I truly believe on the long run, I think they lost more than they ever gained, because I think they lost the trust of the whole world. And I think it's going to impact their export industry and sending out, you know, equipment to the U.S. And we were pretty much one of the largest importer of the Chinese products. So I like what you do, and I'm fascinated that you acted so fast, and I want to be a platform to help you in this process. How can we try to help this process to complete and to go forward? What do you need from my viewers? What do you need from the people that can hear you now?
I think the best thing that we can do, and great things have happened in the United States and around the world when people unite together against a common cause. And we have a common cause here. It's the destruction of the world's economy and the destruction of many, many lives in the United States and around the world. And what we need to do is we need to bring those people together in one forum, one courtroom, to attempt to wield our pressure on China the best we can, whether that's from slowing down exporting, whether that's from direct causes of action against their intentional and reckless behavior. We need your viewers and your listeners and the people who read what you write, Michael, to tell us that they're in, that they're ready to support this cause, that they're behind us. And we don't know what the outcome will be tomorrow or next year or a couple years from now. What we do know is we won't stop fighting until we get this thing resolved the right way. And we've done it before. We know how to do it. And if everyone gets behind us, great things can happen. And I don't know any other remedy for the people. We have to have a remedy for the people to at least bring them back to some semblance of normalcy. And China is a quote unquote world superpower. They have the money and ability to pay for this, and they benefited, as you said, Michael, economically from this. There's only one reason China, technically two reasons, China and the CCP wouldn't have told us about what was going on with the virus. They knew about it in November. They had a diagnosis as early as December, and I suspect we're going to find out that the diagnosis that was made December 1st wasn't the first one. But certainly we know about that. Why wouldn't they have told us? And why should the people that are your viewers and your listeners get behind this? They knew about it. They didn't tell us. The only reason to do that is economic interest. The only reason to hoard the PPE, the personal protective equipment, and stockpile it from around the world and nationalize factories that are companies from the US is to benefit economically. The only other possible reason that they could have done it is sheer embarrassment. We know that the Chinese government does not deal well with embarrassment. So whether it's a combination of the two, or whether they intentionally did this.
If I go down, I take everybody with me, kind of thing, right?
That's correct. And by the way, now think about this, Michael, and I'm sure you already have. They hoarded 98% of the world's PPE, right?
Yes.
Our nurses and doctors in the United States were dying and being infected by COVID, wearing garbage bags to protect themselves. All they had to do is say, you know what, United States, you know what, people of the world, we screwed up. We should have disclosed this information long before this. We should have done other things. So here's what we're going to do. We, China, are going to send 700 cargo planes to the United States for the next 3 weeks, full of PPE. Because, by the way, we had 3M ramp up their production of respirator masks to 12 times normal, and we wouldn't allow them to export it. So we're going to control the exportation, but we're going to send you every bit of equipment you need to combat this virus that we allowed leak out of Wuhan. But they didn't do that. What did they do? They sold the PPE at a high price around the world and then gave away, I use that term lightly, they gave away in a nice way to various countries some PPE to make themselves look good. They could have began to fix the problem they created, but they refused to do it because it was all about money and economic interest and improving their economic position in the world And that is why we are all in the position we are in. And it's abhorrible, and it needs to stop. And we need to say enough is enough. And if your people get behind us, that would be a fantastic step forward.
Absolutely. Jeremy, one more thing. Do you trust on the numbers that they give out for the amount of the numbers of the positive cases in Wuhan, 80,000, and then after 3 months it's 83,000 and only 3,000 people died? Really? Like,
Wuhan is a city of 11 million people. Close quarters, confined quarters. China is a country of 1,400,000,000 people. New York is a city of 8 to 10 million in the confined Manhattan area, and millions around the state. There is no way that Wuhan had 81 to 85,000 diagnoses and 3,000 plus deaths. There have been stories out there and reports out there about the number of urns that have gone to Wuhan, which are multiples of the number of deaths they've had. There have been stories about cell phone lines which were
yes,
not canceled. We don't know what the number is, but it is certainly not 3,000 people.
yes.
Absolutely not. It is certainly not 80,000 diagnoses. And here's how we could get the answer, Michael, if we were given access. China's government won't give us access to the original patient's, patient zero, let's call her or him, the original virus in that patient. If they gave us that, we'd be able to break it down even further. If they allowed our scientists and our doctors to come to the lab and come to the area to see what happened and do an investigation, that would be the start of transparency, but they won't do that.
Which is a better reason.
They don't want the truth out.
Which is a better reason to prove that they're trying to hide the truth and they have lied all along. George, based on what you heard now and what you've known before, what do you think should be the stance of the, just from your personal perspective? I'm not saying that you're presenting any country, but what's the stance that should be taken at the Security Council or the United Nations to escalate? Because I think it's important that the whole world would pay attention to what's happening in China and what Chinese are trying to manipulate and putting certain countries under the thumb now with all these debts that they have against the other countries. What should the rest of the world do?
Well, I think just to kind of summarize some of the points that Jeremy made, we have to unite, we have to fight, and hold a very bad actor accountable. So I think, this is, to use a common term, this is a gloves-off situation. This is an unprecedented situation. I can't think of a nation that has acted more badly. Maybe we'd have to go back to World War II. So I think that all diplomatic measures should be looked at. I think all trade options should be looked at. They have to be held accountable, and not only do they need to be held accountable, they need to provide payment and compensation for all these losses. And I think, again, as I said earlier, as we're moving out of this phase where we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel and we're starting to see an end, we're emerging from these lockdowns, I think the rhetoric that you're seeing against the World Health Organization, for example, the president has been very vocal about his views. I think you're going to see that sort of anger. And I'm specific to use that word anger because we need anger at this time. We need to have some emotion. What was really done is outrageous. And I think even if you're an optimist, if you're somebody that sees things from a positive perspective, at a minimum, the Chinese government was grossly negligent with how they handled things at the outset. But I think there are plenty of people that would take that one step further, and I'm not necessarily saying this is my perspective, but there's some people that would argue that what they did was intentional. Wherever you sit on the spectrum, it doesn't matter. We all have to unite, and this is a collective effort of people, of nations, of businesses, of anybody that has a sense of decency and morality. I can't think of a better rallying point to unite the world. And again, I am somebody that sees things with a very optimistic lens. I see the glass as half full. I think, and I am optimistic that some good things, some good actions are going to come out of all this mess. And look, we live in an age of divisions, of, and again, it doesn't matter where you sit politically. There's no point in assessing or assigning blame, but there's a lot of division. There's a lot of anger. Perhaps COVID, in some crazy way, in our response to COVID and how we're going to find solutions to help the nations and the people that have been harmed by COVID, perhaps that brings us together. So again, I'm optimistic that from this tragedy, some good things will emerge on the horizon.
Thank you. We'll leave it at that note. And Jeremy, thank you very much. George, thank you very much for your time for both. Last thing, Jeremy, how do you feel about Egypt being a third world country with very limited resources, donating some PPE equipment to the U.S. Meanwhile, they're in need for it, and other bigger countries didn't step up and do the same thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, we're grateful for it, and we think it's fantastic. It's a testament to what Egypt has done for us and how powerful it can be when nations actually step up and do the right thing. It's unfortunate that nations like China refuse to do that, and we deal with this regularly, but we let them get away with it, and we have to stop.
Yeah,
and we appreciate everything. And one thing I should say, George had mentioned that, people on different ends of the spectrum, we in this law firm with this lawsuit believe that their actions in silencing the doctors, in not releasing the genome sequence, in not telling us about it, in allowing the dinner in Wuhan to go forward on January 18th with 120,000 people, we believe very strongly those actions were intentional. And if people are like-minded, they can join this lawsuit at demandchinapay.org. It's a
Can you
very
repeat that again?
thing.
Demand.
Yes, I will.
Please.
Demandchinapay.org. Okay. It's join the suit form, and once they do that, they fill out their information very briefly. A lawyer from the firm will contact them within 72 to 96 hours, because we've got a lot of call volume, and talk to them about their situation and see how we can help them. So everyone that that watches the show, demandchinapay.org, and let's get the movement of people even larger.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for both, for your time and for the information. And at a certain point, we would like to have you again on the show to give us an update of where the case is going, and hopefully we'll keep our viewers informed, and hopefully a lot of them will join this case.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Best of luck, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, you too.